Let me take you back to 2009. I'm 4 years old with my mom, grandma, and aunt in our 2002 Honda Civic back in my hometown of Panatnakhon, Thailand. Now, growing up, I had my mom and my dad, but to me, my aunt was my favorite because I loved playing with her. One day, we were headed out to our favorite noodle shop, and I was seated on my aunt's lap. She's teaching me how to count to 10 on my fingers in Thai. But I'm getting a little confused because as I reach number 10, my pinky finger still remains up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. I remember 4-year-old me thinking, do I have too many fingers? Did I do something wrong? My aunt repeats the same string of numbers, and so I try again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. And still, my pinky finger remains up. From the rearview mirror, my grandma notices my confusion, and she tells me, Jessie, Aunt Pung never really learned to count with the number 8. She has Down syndrome. I was like, what the heck is Down syndrome? Was it a toy, a car, the latest Barbie dream house from Toys R Us? To me, my aunt was just that, an aunt, my favorite caretaker and best friend. But with every day I went to preschool, the more I realized how much my aunt never learned. And by the time I entered primary school, I could no longer ask her about the concepts that came up in my classes. I was, and still very much am, incredibly interested in what makes us learn and remember differently. I was never the brightest bulb in school, so why did it take her longer to learn something than me? What made our brains different? So when I first joined Stanford as a freshman, I came across this lab led by Stanford professor H. Craig Heller, who studies sleep, learning, and memory in Down syndrome, amongst various other research interests. Now, I'd never been in a lab before, let alone read a scientific publication, but I knew that this was the place where I wanted or needed to be. And thankfully, by I don't know what stroke of luck, Professor Heller agreed to allow some overexcited and inexperienced freshmen to join his team. To put us all on the same page, Down syndrome is defined as the presence of 3 copies of chromosome 21, where typically only 2 are present. This triplication, or trisomy, results in the learning and memory challenges experienced by those with Down syndrome. Now, some might not think that investing in Down syndrome is worthwhile due to declining Down syndrome births with advancements in prenatal testing. But what if I were to tell you that investing in Down syndrome research could potentially improve the abilities of every single one of you in this room, as well as those of you listening to this online, to remember this talk? The summer after my freshman year, I began researching full-time at the Heller Lab through the Stanford BioX Fellowship. Every day, I would head down to the basement and be surrounded by mice, about half of which have Down syndrome. These mice are genetically engineered to reflect the characteristics we see in humans with Down syndrome, so we can better understand their traits on a model organism. My day-to-day responsibilities included weighing the mice, taking their blood samples, and conducting learning and memory tests. We have 2 important learning and memory tests. The first evaluates short-term memory through a T-maze, and the second, an object recognition test, which evaluates long-term memory by seeing if mice can recall objects they've previously been exposed to. I was fascinated by what we could do to improve their learning and memory. Every day, I would run out from the basement and bombard Professor Heller with questions I'd read across publications from Nature and Google Scholar trying to understand the difference between the Down syndrome and non-Down syndrome mouse brain. And by the end of the summer, I came across a pretty interesting finding. Now, we all know that neurons talk to one another. This governs how our memories are encoded, stored, and then later retrieved. At Stanford's Heller Lab, the accepted hypothesis is that intellectual disability in Down syndrome results from inhibition. In other words, the neurons don't talk to each other as much as they should. But in parallel, at the Italian Institute of Technology, another leading Down syndrome research institute, they hypothesize the exact opposite. Intellectual disability in Down syndrome results from excitation. And in other words, the neurons talk too much. So which is it? And why is this question important? Our first instinct when somebody says something that opposes our beliefs is to say, that's not true. But to me, a good scientist welcomes the possibility of being wrong. The point of research is to investigate what is unknown, so we can never know for certain that our hypotheses or interpretations are absolute truths. So to me, the fact that Stanford and the Italian Institute of Technology have opposing hypotheses is a prime opportunity to bring our diverse skill sets together to answer the question, what causes intellectual disability in Down syndrome? And how can we improve this? This summer, I'll be working at the Italian Institute of Technology through a Stanford collaboration to make progress on this very question. To draw a parallel between our work and an important scientific breakthrough, I'd like to share the story of basal cell carcinoma, a common form of skin cancer. Now, with a show of hands, have any of you ever met someone who's had skin cancer? I see many of you. Now, today, we're fortunate to have FDA-approved topical treatments and medications that treat this form of cancer. But how were they first invented? From a frickin' fruit fly. Literally, a fruit fly helped to form our modern-day cancer treatments. In the 1970s, scientists discovered a mutation that caused certain fruit flies to appear short and hairy. And in humans, this very same mutation is implicated in cancer pathology. With this information, drug developers were primed with the information they needed to proceed with a therapeutic. Target the mutation. And this is the strategy employed by today's cancer treatments. Now, when scientists were first discovering these short and hairy flies, none of them were thinking, this fly, it's going to save somebody's life with basal cell carcinoma. No, they were just experimenting on different mutations that changed the anatomy of a simple model organism. It was by complete accident that this mutation was implicated in cancer pathology. In the same way it took a nonlinear trajectory to find a treatment for basal cell carcinoma, the fact that Stanford and the Italian Institute of Technology have opposing hypotheses only means we need to invest in this type of research to find a common signifier. I would argue that Down syndrome research will provide the same exponential benefit as these unassuming hairy flies. We are presented with the observation that individuals with Down syndrome have challenges with learning and memory. Now, we have the opportunity to find solutions to this through our research. And in doing so, we can better understand adjacent conditions seen frequently in Down syndrome, such as Alzheimer's and autism, that also implicate learning and memory. In the same way a person with Alzheimer's experiences a gradual disintegration of their memories, or a person with autism may struggle to learn social cues or information. The research we do on learning and memory in Down syndrome mice can help us better understand these adjacent conditions. Now, I don't have Down syndrome, autism, or Alzheimer's, at least I don't in 2025, but I certainly want to learn and remember better. Wouldn't you? So when we understand how we can improve cognition in Down syndrome, we can better understand how to improve cognition in those without. And maybe we can improve the cognition of every single one of you in this room. So Down syndrome research can help you too. Everybody wins. People with Down syndrome, people without, and our society. So if Down syndrome is something you've just heard about today, or if it feels scary to invest in a condition we know little about, I urge you to be a supporter and advocate for our work. Recognize that our research has the potential to change the way we think about learning and memory. And through it, we can create a future where we better learn and remember what matters. There is a parallel universe where my aunt could become educated enough to pursue any of her passions, be it a scientist, philosopher, or astronaut. There is a universe where our elders can better recall the stories and lessons of their childhoods. There is a universe where our abilities to learn are strengthened with our age. So when we invest in Down syndrome, not only do we create a future where we learn better, but a future that is more memorable. Thank you.